and welcome back. We are Black Cat Paranormal. My name is Emma.
I'm Claire.
And we are paranormal investigators based in Berkshire. For those of you who watched last week's show, we reviewed episodes 1 to 5 of The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix.
Welcome back.
Yes, and thank you for coming back. Where today we will be reviewing the second half of the season, starting with episode 7, which is the famous panning episode. The whole episode is filmed in one shot, which I think is pretty impressive.
Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely amazing how they did that.
Can you imagine being the one that got it wrong?
No.
Like, can you imagine
Right,
all the way through and then someone makes a mistake
Yeah.
and like, oh. Actually saying that, there is a scene where Theo falls over.
Yeah.
And that wasn't actually scripted. And then the guys come over to help her, but she manages to keep it in character and make it look like she did it because she was drunk, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Because I think if that had happened to me, I'd have been like, oh, I'm so sorry, I ruined it.
She didn't crumble, which is amazing.
And the others didn't as well. They kind of
went with them.
You know, they made it look like it was part of the scene, which is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And obviously that's Nell's funeral as well. And it actually took me a little while to notice, and I don't know why, but the bent neck lady does appear in the aisle. They pan round and you see it, and I don't know why I didn't notice that for a long time.
Yeah, I think if we kind of go through from the start, we can see it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think if you want to start.
So we know at this point that Nell's the bent neck lady. The family don't. To them it was just a childish nightmare. And I love the point where Hugh works out that she is the bent neck lady.
Yeah.
That's just so, it fits, you know.
Yes.
He finally finds out the truth, because I mean he obviously thought, you know, child having nightmares, and then it's leaked into adulthood. Didn't make much sense.
Yeah.
That moment.
I think because if we go from the start, so obviously the kids. Well, actually no. Hugh arrives at the funeral home with Shell. Yep. Shell is still massively miffed off with her husband who's been sleeping in a hotel.
Yeah.
Because of the whole kiss with Theo.
Yeah.
And so Hugh turns up and he's talking to his grandchildren, and they're sort of saying, oh, I don't remember hanging out with you, which is really sad. And then Shirley basically tells him to go, doesn't she?
Yeah.
It's not open yet, so to go and sit with or with Theo.
Very rude.
Yeah. Which, it's heartbreaking.
I suppose, isn't it?
I think it is, and the fact that she still hasn't forgiven him for not telling them everything. But so he goes over to Theo, doesn't he? Yeah. And then they're talking, and I think they kind of open up to each other a little bit, don't they? Which is quite nice. Then they all go back over, don't they, when it's opened? Yeah. I think, and they all turn up except for Luke initially, isn't it?
He's on the plane, isn't he? Yeah. He's on the plane with Steve and the dad, though they put the dad in coach.
That bit was brilliant.
Yeah.
So they're like,
it was like a little bit of payback.
Like, you two travelled in first class and you put dad in coach.
Yeah.
And then... But I think you would want every little bit, if you really blamed your dad for your mum's death,
tiny
you would.
things,
Little small revenges, I think.
Yeah.
But, and oh my God, one of my favourite scenes, oh mind you, there are so many in that episode, is when Hugh walks in and it pans round and he sees them as children.
Yes.
And I think when it pans back to him, you can just imagine they're in the background like, oh, shh, come on,
go.
Get back in.
Really quietly. It's amazing.
But it is a really cute moment where he sees them
as children. Like a flashback, you know, to before all the chaos started, before they moved into Hill House, and he's probably thinking in that moment, but what went wrong, you know.
Yeah, but I guess that's how he saw them, wasn't it? Because he didn't see them; they went to live with their aunt. Yeah. So that's kind of how he remembers them, isn't it? I guess. And
now they're all grown up; they're angry at him, and they've got children of their own, and he doesn't know them, and it's awful. And
and I guess you can kind of understand the kids where they're coming from, but it's really difficult when you know that he was doing it to protect them, isn't it? And I think that's, you know, where the problem comes. And then, of course, he goes to see Nell, which is heartbreaking because, you know, I mean, I've got kids, so imagine having to go and see a child like that. It must be absolutely devastating. Anyone who's had to go through that, oh,
it's awful.
Oh, my heartfelt sympathy, because it must be terrible.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Luke arrives.
Who's lost a twin, which, you know,
again,
awful.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But do you want to explain about the scene with Luke when he goes with Steve? Does he know?
Yeah, so that's the bit where he struggles, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're struggling to go see now. They don't want to see. I guess it's like admitting that, you know, you actually see the physical fault and that's it. She's definitely gone.
Yeah.
You know, Steve really, really struggles with that, and he sort of tries to make a joke out of it, and it doesn't really work.
He's kind of like, that's her. Yes,
Yeah.
officer. That's her. Yeah.
I thought
But
at first I thought that was a bit stupid, but then I watched it back. I thought, well, in grief, you know, you just want to lighten it up, and
and I think you think that it will be Luke that loses it, wouldn't you? But the fact that it's Steve and he's this like very matter of fact, you know, this is this and this is that, and there's no in between.
Yeah.
And yet he loses it, and Luke manages to keep it together. But
then I wonder if Luke knew way before everyone else did, even before he knew that she'd gone. So he's had longer to accept it, you know, because of the twin thing, and he had all those feelings of the coldness and the sweating.
I think at the time he didn't, and then as soon as Steve arrived and said she's gone, he was like, okay, that's why I'm feeling like this. Yeah.
Whereas the other siblings didn't have that. They didn't have that link to Nell, so they've had to go through, you know, denial and not knowing. And then you physically see her, and it's like, okay, she's definitely gone. She's not coming back.
And it's so well written, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And then Luke just goes. He's like, I can't handle it. And he goes and sits down, and they're kind of comforting him. And that's when the other siblings find out that Steve's separated from his wife, and he's like, no, this isn't the time to talk about that, isn't he? And then what do we have now? Oh, then we have obviously Hugh goes to see her, and when he first sees her in the coffin, she's a child again, isn't she? Which again is just so heartbreaking. And I think that's the moment, isn't it, where there's the storm. So the other siblings start kind of rushing around. Apart from Theo, who's just looking for another bottle of vodka.
Which
they're all rushing around, and I think that's the moment where Hugh kind of turns around and he sees Nell.
Yeah, and then it just makes sense.
And then it's like, hang on, this is the Bent lady.
But then you consider what he knows about that. I mean, if anyone else saw that ghost, if any of the other siblings, it just probably wouldn't have clicked. But for him, he knows the history of the house.
Yeah.
He saw what happened. He saw what happened to his wife. He knows so much more than the kids do. So he probably looked at it and thought, not surprised.
And that's when we split into the two storms factor, isn't it? So,
which is amazing. So there's two storms. There's one in the funeral home where Nell and the family are, and the other storm is back in Hill House with the kids, and there's a massive power cut. So they're all running around trying to find torches, and then Nell disappears. So they're running around trying to find Nell, not sure where she is, assume that she's hiding. And it turns out that she was right there all along. They just couldn't see her. And that could be the house trying to, you know, get them ready, I suppose, for her disappearance.
Yeah, kind of foreshadowing.
Yeah. And they find her and they're relieved, and it's great. And then she's like, I was right here. You just didn't see me. I was shouting and screaming. You didn't see me. It was so upsetting.
That bit really, actually, that brought a tear to my eye, because she's just stood there.
She's
and
so
then
tiny.
little Nell is saying, I was here all the time, and you just couldn't see me. And then you've got grown up, you know, you've got Nell's ghost stood in the aisle saying, and that bit I think,
and again,
so
she's
sad.
there, but the siblings can't see her.
Yeah, because the chandelier falls down, doesn't it, in the main hallway, and they're trying to kind of fix that, and there's actually a very good ghost in the background of that, but we're going to talk about that in a little while. So I think there's so many good points in episode 6. Is it 7? Where am I getting confused?
6. Episode 6. But the one good point, I think, actually, it might be the next episode where they find out that the storm was only at Hill House.
Yes, so that is the next one.
Love that.
You're jumping.
Yes, I am.
It's because it's so good.
It is amazing. You just get so many favourite moments.
Yeah, and I think episode 6 is, I can say, other than the finale, it's my favourite episode. Yeah. I think it's just so well done, and the fact that it is all done in one take is amazing. Excuse me. So yeah, I think that's my favourite. And then of course at the end they can't find Luke, and Luke has taken Shirley's wallet. Yeah. And Theo's car, hasn't he? And they think, oh, he's just going to get fixed, don't they? Yeah. So then we move on to the next episode.
Yes, which is actually another one of my favourites. Shocker. I say that about every single episode. Yeah. But one of the reasons that it is my favourite is because obviously you've got Luke going back to Hill House. He's been called back to Hill House.
Yeah.
he wants to go get revenge on the house. He wants to burn it down, but also because of Mr. Dudley's monologue, he opens up and says, you know, why they're still at Hill House, which makes sense. It's a question that you don't think to ask at the beginning. Why, if this house is so haunted and horrible, why would you stay there? Why would you work there? And it's because their baby was there.
Yeah.
His wife lost a baby very late in the pregnancy, and he tells the story of, you know, she worked herself to the bone. Her boss wouldn't let her have time off.
Yeah.
And
the
she
Hills,
ended
this
up,
is the original
yeah,
family, isn't it?
she ended up losing the baby on the premises. And one night she was working and she heard the baby cry, and she run back through the forest to their little cottage. Got Hugh, back. They run back.
Hugh.
Yeah, and was it Hugh? No, Mr. Dudley. Mr. Dudley, sorry. And
So she got Hugh.
yeah, and they heard the baby crying.
Yeah.
And that's why they've stayed, because they can't see the baby, but they know it's there.
And at this point, we still don't know about Abigail, do we? We don't know who she is.
They never mention her.
And so you still think, yeah, she's a ghost. So you don't realise. And again, I think that scene between Mr. Dudley and Hugh is so emotional, and I mean that's credit to the actors, isn't it?
The way he tells the story.
So because amazing. I think all the way through they've been kind of side characters, almost, and then in that one scene it's like, okay, wow, you know, he is really an integral part of this house. But also he's trying to warn Hugh about Liv, isn't he? It's like, you need to get her away from this house, because the same thing is going to happen. And of course that's when in that episode, the storm, as you say, they find out from Mr. Dudley that the storm actually was over Hill House but nowhere else. And they find that a bit weird. The windows are all broken in, and at that time Hugh is looking for Liv, and he thinks he sees her by the window at the top of the stairs, and then the glass blows in and she's not there anymore. And he's struggling to find her. And is that the point? I think that's the point where she's in the kid's bedroom and she thinks she's talking to the twins.
And then Steve's like, what are you doing? You know? Twins aren't here, you're talking to an empty bedroom. And it kind of looks like she's going mad. But obviously later on it shows she's not. And I think it's so well done.
And I think this is the point where Steve starts to think it's just mental illness. I think this is where he gets the mental illness from, because he thinks that's what's going on with his mum. And of course he makes that lovely dressing table for her, and he paints it all and makes it lovely for her, gives it to her, and she then sees adult twins and smashes the glass, doesn't she? And there's a little nod back. So when she's talking to the twins when they're little, and Nell says how she was going to be so depressed that she'd die, and that Luke was going to start putting things in his body, doesn't she? There's that little scene. And then Liv sees them as adults on the slab, like, so Nell's on the slab and he's on the floor, and he's obviously overdosed. And so she's kind of seeing into the future that way. So she punches the mirror and breaks it, and then Steve just thinks she's...
From Steve's point of view, you know, your mum's just smashed through a mirror. What are you going to think, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's really good the way they did it from his point of view, and then what really happens. So you can see both points of view. You can see where Steve got the idea that his mum was just a bit mad, crazy, mental illness, and then you see what really happened.
And up to this point, Steve hasn't seen any ghosts, has he? So there's no reason for him to think anything else has happened. And then that's where Steve, after the storm, Steve feels the wall and realises that it's squishy, doesn't he? He's like, hang on, this wall's squishy. And that's when they realise that there's water in the walls. So Hugh goes down into the basement, doesn't he? And realises that the water damage has gone all the way through. And that's actually a nod back to episode 1, because there's a part where Steve is telling the widow about the leak, and that's where the water's dropping, and he says to her, you want to get that fixed because water damage is bad. Did you not?
I didn't even notice that. Well,
so in the first episode he's like, you need to get that water damage fixed now. and it's because of what happened in the house when he was young.
He experienced it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that little nod back.
Yeah.
And every time I watch it now, I'm like, oh, that's so good.
The
Such
little
good
details that
foreshadowing.
they've put in,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Because you would in real life, wouldn't you? If you'd
Yeah.
experienced water damage and you saw it coming on someone else's house, you'd be like,
yeah,
get that fixed.
to him
now.
what, where now?
I did that bit.
I'm not sure about. I don't remember that bit, but you know, I have to rewatch.
It's in the outtakes, you know.
The outtakes.
The spin-off.
Hugh really enjoys this house. What can you say?
was a big part of their life.
I'm not sure he enjoyed it that much. And we're off. Okay, we warned you last week that this would
gosh.
happen, so you know you've only got yourself to blame if you
Fault.
came back.
Honestly, she corrupts.
I'm Krups. Wow, you're
Okay.
on a roll today. Right. Anyway, getting back to the issue at hand. So they realise that the water damage has caused black mould running all through the house, and of course Hugh is devastated because the amount of work that would take to actually turn the house around now. He's still chuckling.
Sorry.
And so of course when they're down there, they're kind of ripping things out and smashing the walls.
Yeah.
And then they hear something in the walls, don't they? Look in and they think, rats.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like the rats, does he? And then that's where they find bones, don't they?
Yeah.
So,
And there's obviously the fan scene as well in that one where he turns the
Ooh.
fan on and it makes me cringe every time.
Ouch.
He cuts his hand and
So you
Blah.
get Steve to unplug it, doesn't he?
yeah.
And then he puts his hand in and it just starts anyway. And
But then you've got the argument, did Steve do it wrong somehow? Or did the house make the
I think
fan
it was
come on?
definitely the house because you physically see Steve unplug it, don't you? I mean, I guess unless he unplugged the wrong one. But...
Yeah, but I personally think it was the house, just like the house maybe didn't want them to discover the bones.
Yeah,
Because
that's a good point.
you know, maybe there's a connection between the body and the ghost there, and it wanted to keep it in, you know, keep one of its secrets hidden.
And that's a good point because the ghost ends up being Mr. Hill, who in life said that he was quite small in stature. And he said in life that he wanted to be tall, he wanted to be a tall man. And then he ends up being the ghost who we referred to as Slenderman last week.
Which makes you wonder, what was it, like a deal he made with the house maybe? You know, why would the house make him tall? Like, do you know what I mean?
I think that's part of what the house does. It gets in your mind, doesn't it? And it sees what you want and it gives it to you, even if in your mind it gives it to you. Because with Liv, it makes her believe that it's really dangerous for the kids to be out in the world and she needs to keep them safe in the house.
Yes. So if she gets them back in, they'll be safe.
Exactly. So that's what's leading Liv all along, is that she doesn't want... And it's not even all of her kids. She focuses mainly on the twins, which, you know, you think is a bit harsh, but I think it's because they're so young.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want them corrupted. I think maybe she thinks that the older children are already slightly corrupted.
Or maybe that they'll be all right. Maybe there's...
Or maybe they
she
can look
knows.
after themselves. But the house shows her, it's always the twins that that the house shows her. And I think that's how it gets in her head. And I think it's the same with everyone else in there. It shows you what you want, doesn't it? And then that's what you become if you stay in the house.
I mean, it does make sense. I mean, the twins are the ones that, you know, obviously Nell dies and then Luke gets addicted. So it's almost like, you know, the house is showing her this is going to happen.
Yeah.
If you want to stop it, get them back in the house, you know.
Yeah.
Keep them here, they'll be safe.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the argument that if they hadn't moved there, would they still have ended up like that? But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the bones are found, so they get the police down, don't they, to come and excavate the bones. And there are some really good ghost reveals in that one, which we're going to go through. Some of the ghosts, I think, are quite obvious, but there are so many. When I was doing research for this episode, there are so many ghosts that I didn't see that now I have to go back and look
We'll
at
have to watch
all
it
of
again.
them. Oh no, what a shame. Oh, I'm devastated.
This is like the 50th time. Damn. We love it.
Don't let them know. Then moving on, the police are there. They get the bones and they kind of say to him, you know, thanks if there's anything else.
Yeah.
You know, let us know. Thank you for finding that. So then he goes back to the business of just dealing with the water damage. But then that's putting pressure, and he asks Liv to give him the plans, doesn't he?
Oh yes.
and she gets them and she takes them down to him. And he looks, and you don't know what he's looking at, do you? Originally, you're like, what? You've got the plans, what are you after?
To us, it just looks like a plan.
Yeah, but it's not, is
It's
it?
not.
What is it?
So she's drawn the forever house over and over and over again.
Yeah.
In tiny, I don't know how she did it. It's tiny. And she's just drawn it in every single space of the plans.
Yeah.
Because that's what she's building in earlier episodes. She's designing their forever house. They're going to sell Hill House for a lot of money. Then they're going to go somewhere and they're going to build their forever house where they're going to live forever. They'll be really happy and, you know, live happily ever after.
But does that mean, so this is just speculating, but does that mean that the house is making her believe that it's her forever home? And that's why she's written it in the plans like that. So Hugh realises, and he's like, oh my god, something's going on.
Yeah.
Really, I need to listen to Mr. Dudley and get her out of the house.
Yeah.
And that's when he suggests that she goes to her sister's.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Which she agrees to. She it's almost like she realises.
Yeah.
You know, maybe she doesn't agree something's wrong, but she just wants a break, you know.
Yeah, she kind
See
of
what
knows
happens.
that she's not right because she's having the headaches more.
Yeah.
She's just not feeling herself. She wants to sleep all the time.
Yeah. She just doesn't know the extent of the problem.
She's having these horrible visions about the twins all the time. So yeah. So then I think we move on to the next one, don't we?
Yes.
Screaming Mimis.
Yes, and the introduction of Poppy, who is a brilliant character. She's really menacing.
Oh yeah.
And we don't find out. We find out a little bit about her, that she lived in the house. She married Mr. Hill, who was found in the wall, and she had children with him, one of whom was in a wheelchair, which is a nod back to earlier when Liv had a vision of, you know, the family room and the kid in the wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Poppy's family that she's seeing, and obviously in this episode she meets Poppy, and you know she obviously realises that Liv's vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's when because she had a baby that died, didn't she? Because she's looking at the crib.
Yeah.
And she mentions the baby's death, but I don't think she goes into detail.
She doesn't say whether it was murder, natural.
Yeah.
She's living with the grief of her children dying.
Yeah, and then she talks about her son in the wheelchair and how she listens. She can hear him just banging on the walls all the time. So I think, you know, she locked him away. Yeah,
which is what they did back then. They didn't know how to help, and there was shame. So it's horrible, but that makes sense.
And she started having the screaming Mimis, so the really bad nightmares that Liv was having. And I think she did kill the children because I think it was the screaming Mimis. Yes. Which
is why she's telling Liv, you need to kill them to keep them safe.
Yeah, so she's saying, get them to the house, keep them here. This is the only way you're going to be able to protect them. Yeah. And Liv starts to believe that, doesn't she? Yeah,
she really gets in her head. It's brilliant acting. Absolutely amazing.
So good. And then she agrees that, I'll go to my sister's. I think I really need a break. Yeah. She says, you know, she's worried about Hugh and the kids. And he's like, oh, it's fine, we'll be good. Which I really think he would have been. Yeah. But then I also think if he'd been alone with the kids, would the house then have started on him the way it was on
Liv? But then he is more of a skeptic, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
Liv's probably quite vulnerable because obviously she's,
she has ability herself, doesn't she? So I guess that's right. But then she says she's going to her sister, but then she checks into a hotel, which just happens to be the hotel room that not only Nell checked into, but then Hugh checks into with the children. Yeah, so it's all in the same room.
Hotel room, so it must be down the road or something.
It's
convenient hotel, cheapest in the area.
Yeah, it's like.
But it's nice they use the same location because it's, you know, it's got a history there. You know, it's a little bit of, you know.
And then she stays there, doesn't she? And she rings Hugh, makes out that she's with her sister, and you know that everything's fine, and then sneaks back to the house. Yeah,
she does, and then she sneaks back in. Shirley, isn't it, that finds her in the kitchen, and then she goes and finds Hugh and says, "Mum's acting a bit weird." She's a bit scared at this point. Yeah. So Hugh goes to find her. Can't see her. She's obviously got the twins out of bed and Abigail, who snuck in. But at this point we realise isn't a ghost. Yeah, she's real.
Yeah. So we see like Hugh goes into the kitchen and sees cups set out, teacups, but also like a rat poison,
which he bought.
Yeah. And then realizes what must be going on.
Yeah.
And that's when he runs, doesn't he? He runs up to the red room and finds the doors open for the first time since they've been there.
But all the rooms in that house, I don't understand quite why he would go to the red room, because that's you think that door's locked. No one's going to be in there. It's almost like maybe something told him, instinct or something, go to the red room.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, while he's looking for her, you actually see you see Liv in the red room with Nell, Luke and Abigail.
Yeah.
And she's pouring tea. Yes, we're having a tea party.
Yeah.
Come on. Pours tea and tells Abigail, drink up, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Drink up. And of course, Abigail starts convulsing. Foam starts coming out of her mouth and she sadly passes away, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And Luke and Nell are kind of like, what's going on? And Liv's trying desperately to get them to drink it, isn't she?
Yeah, because she thinks, right, Abigail's dead. She's safe now.
She's safe, yeah.
She's okay. She's, gonna stay in the house. She thinks she's doing the right thing at this point. Like, there's nothing to suggest that she thinks, what have I done?
Yeah, and then Hugh runs up. He goes in the door and he sees that Abigail is dead, and he sees the twins about to drink, so he knocks their cups out. And then he tries to get to Abigail, doesn't he, to revive her, realises she's dead. And then he kind of grabs Liv, doesn't he, to try and push her away from the kids.
Yeah.
She goes back, she hits her head, damages her wrist as well, I think, doesn't she?
And her leg, I think.
And her leg.
Later.
Oh, it is the leg as well.
Yeah. In the last scene, but
So I think she bangs against the wall and falls. I think she hits her head, her arm and her leg. And then Hugh grabs the twins and you see him kind of running down the hall with them.
Yeah.
And he's saying to Shirley, Theo, get them in the car. And he just grabs her arm and then she sees what he did to Liv. And
all he sees is the wrist pushing her away.
Yeah, so she thinks that he's just attacked their mum.
Yeah.
And so she takes the siblings, gets them in the car, and then he goes back to get Stephen, doesn't he? And there's also, I'd never noticed this one until I was researching, but when he goes into Stephen's room to get him, there's a ghost in there.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's in the back where all the dark is, and you'll only see it if you turn up the contrast on your telly.
Oh,
that's a good one. And then gets Luke, doesn't he?
He does. And the other little thing I've just thought of as well, literally just now, when they're in the red room, she gives Nell and she says, "Your cup of stars."
Yeah.
Now later on, when you see Nell, she has got a cup of stars. You'd think that kind of, you'd have a bad association, wouldn't you, with her? You wouldn't want a cup of stars.
No,
but it's almost like it stayed with her.
I wouldn't want a cup of stars.
No. But she does actually have a cup of stars later on.
Yeah, that is a lovely moment.
Yeah.
And I think then that kind of takes us up to finale territory, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is one of the single most best finales I've ever seen. It's incredible how much they crap.
I think I missed that bit out.
Yeah, deleted scene. No, how much I can't pack. Thank you.
It's
into one episode.
non-stop.
Thank you. Yeah, my brain just massively farted there. Sorry.
There's just not a moment of rest really, because it's just going.
Full on, isn't it?
And it's amazing, but it's not too much because it's just right. It's just perfect the way they did it.
Yeah. So they drive off. As they drive off, the kids look back and they see Abigail in the window and they see their mum. And so Luke's saying, "Go back. Abigail. What about Abigail?" Steve sees his mum and he's like, "Mum, Mum," and they're all screaming and Hugh's just trying to get away. Drives them to the same motel, puts them in the same room, and they're confused. They don't know what's going on. And he says, "Right, I need to go back and get your mum." And he asks Steve and Shell to look after them, and he locks the door. And which I thought was a bit weird, because I get, like, the kids locking the door from the inside, but he locks them from the outside. So what happened? Yeah.
Health and safety.
I was just going to say health and safety.
We spend too much time together.
We do, yeah. So.
But one of the best moments, I think, is when they're talking about what they saw in the house, and they're quizzing each other. What did you see? What did you see?
Yeah.
And Stephen said, "I saw Mum," and then Nell says that wasn't mummy, you know, she's right, you know.
Yeah.
Physically, yes, but mentally, no. That's not. And it's like she knows.
It's like the struggle, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
Stephen's like very much, that's mum.
Yeah.
Theo's that's mum because that's what she saw when Hugh touched her. But then Luke and Nell are like, no, that wasn't mummy.
Yeah.
That wasn't.
The
mummy.
house has got into their head a little bit as well.
Exactly. And then so Hugh is gone all night. He eventually comes back, and the only one awake is Nell. So he walks back. He's covered in blood. Obviously, it's not his blood. It's all over his shirt. It's all over his hands. And he takes Nell outside, and she says, "What's this?" And he says, "Oh, it's just paint."
And she doesn't question it because
she's too small. Yeah,
she's innocent, and I guess you wouldn't. You want to believe your dad's telling you the truth, and you know you don't want to.
Yeah, and then police turn up, and he's like, "It's okay, I called them." And you see him go off and talk to them, and he comes back over to Nell, and he sort of explains that her auntie's coming, and she'll be there at 2:00. Yeah. And that's when he gets his watch out, doesn't he? And he says tap 2, and that's obviously what Nell did when she went to the house. Little flashback that I wanted to mention, and I forgot. So when Nell goes to the house originally, the lights flash a really nice warm glow. Yeah. When Luke gets to the house, they flash red. Yeah. And it's because the house is angry because they know that Luke's going there to try and burn it down. Yeah. I think that's a really clever little detail that a lot of people would have missed.
And I guess you could say that Nell's going home. Nell's there. When she's there, she's
doing what they wanted.
Yeah, it's almost like she's accepted, this is where I'm going to die. I'm going to go back in. Yeah. Whereas Luke's going in there for revenge.
Yeah, he just wants to destroy it because it's destroyed his family. Yeah. And the house knows that, so it gets angry and flashes red. And I think that's just such a nice little touch, isn't it?
Because the house is a character at the end of the day. It has feelings and thoughts. And, you know, obviously at that point I hated it. I loved the bit where he throws petrol down and throws the lighter down and nothing happens. The house is just like, no.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh no, now we're in trouble.
Yeah, now you wound it up.
But then he sees his mum, doesn't he, at the top of the stairs, and he's kind of like, Mum, you know, what's going on? And then it cuts away, doesn't he? So you don't actually see what happens, what's going on.
But he ends up in the red room.
Yeah, he ends up in the red room. Yeah. And then obviously Hugh gets taken in for questioning by the police, and he's trying to explain what happens. And then I believe, if I'm right, it cuts to present day, because I think, is that the bit where Stephen goes with Hugh. So so they're chasing Luke, aren't they? Yeah. We've missed a really important
witness marks, haven't we?
Yeah. So what we have missed is it's just so excited. I know. So what we have missed in the previous episode is that Theo and Shirley are in Shirley's house, and the boys have left to go find Luke, and they're just there alone, and they're trying to talk. You know, Theo's trying to talk to Shirley about what happened. Shirley's having none of it. I think she slaps her, doesn't she, or punches her in the boob, and she's like, "Oh, you hit me in the boob," which I found quite funny. Because she like full on, you'd have thought she smacked her, but she hit her in the boob because I think she didn't want to.
It was almost like she went to hit her and then changed her mind, but
don't do that.
Accidentally hit her in the boob.
And she's still telling Theo, "Get out! You need to get out." Yeah. And then they start hearing a banging all around them, and then that goes back again to the scene earlier when they're little and they're
banging on the walls,
and they're banging in the walls, and then Hugh comes in and he doesn't see it, and that's when he does that horrible thing.
Oh
with his
god,
mouth.
yeah, it always creeps us out every
time. Even if I don't, if I look away, I always look back at the wrong bit because his mouth's really open. Yeah, and that nods back to that one. And in the end, they open the door because initially they think it's trick-or-treaters because it's Halloween, and they open the door, there's no one there, close it again, and then it gets louder and louder. Open the door, still no one there, so Cheryl goes out thinking that it's someone messing around. Yeah. Still no one there. So in the end, they're like, nope, sod this, and they jump in the car, don't they? And then, so they start following, so they know they've gone to Hill House, so they're just on their way. And they're arguing the whole way in the car, and really getting heated with the argument. And then all of a sudden, Nell comes in between them and screams, doesn't she?
That moment, the first time I saw that was horrific. Like, there's not many jumpy moments in Hill House, which is what makes it such a good series.
Yeah, they don't just rely on jump scares.
But that one, because you've got to this point where there's not many jumpy moments, and it does make sense to put a jumpy moment in there because it just takes you. You're not ready for it.
But also, it's important because it's Nell saying, "Shut up! This isn't important."
Yeah.
You know, what are you going on about? And of course, then they stop the car. Theo jumps out. Shirley follows, and Theo is just on the ground, and she just
meltdown
in absolute tears. I think she's still got a vodka bottle in her hand, isn't
Yeah.
she? And she melts down, and she starts to sort of explain to Shirley what's going on and why she kissed her husband. Sort of explaining that after she touched Nell, there was nothing, and then she just all she could feel was that nothing, and no matter what she did.
Yeah.
She couldn't feel again.
She couldn't feel Nell either, I think.
Yeah, she couldn't feel Nell. And
she wanted Nell to be around.
Yeah. And there's just this void, and that's all she could feel. So getting drunk, nothing helped. And I think Shirley sort of realises then. She's still not forgiven her. She's still a bit
well, you would be
off.
you?
But she's kind of realising a bit more, I think.
Yeah.
So then they're all on their way to Hill House. And, when they get there. So... Do you want to?
Yeah, so the other bit of that episode is obviously Steve and Hugh are in the car driving as well. They get there first. They have a conversation there. Steve says, "I'm never having children because there's so much mental illness in this family."
Yeah.
So he's there then trying to explain to him that, you know, it wasn't mental health. It was the house, the ghosts. And then he says, ghosts don't exist. It's mental illness. And then he asks him about... I don't know how they got onto it. They talk about the man who was fixing the clock.
Yeah.
Steve brings it up, and then he says that clock has been there for 200 years. Nobody has worked on it because you can tell from the witness marks.
Yeah.
You know, when someone works on it, they leave their own mark. Nobody worked on that clock. I never hired anyone. That clock never left the premises. But there was someone working on, and it's kind of the realisation that Steve did see a ghost. He just didn't realise it was a ghost.
He didn't realise. Also, again, sort of think we kind of glossed over the fact that Stephen said, "I'm not having kids because of the mental illness," and we find out that when he got with his wife, he had a vasectomy.
Yeah. I think
didn't
you'd bring
tell
that up,
her,
wouldn't you? You know?
Yeah, let her go through fertility treatment, let her think that it was her, only to find out that it was him. And there's also a nod to the fact that he might have had an affair, because when they're in the room, I don't know if you noticed this, when they're in the room talking to the doctor about the fertility treatment, he looks up and there's a woman at the window.
Yeah, I always assumed that was Nell or his mum.
But I think that, I think it's lots of people think different things, but I think it's nodding to the fact that he maybe had an affair.
It would make sense. I mean, how unhappy he is, the childhood trauma.
Yeah.
But...
And then obviously he tells his wife, or his wife finds out, and then that's why they split up.
Just such an awful thing to do, it really is. But then, you know, he's angry at the world.
Yeah.
He really doesn't want children. You'd think he'd just marry someone who didn't want children, to be honest. It'd be much easier, but you know.
But you'd think, if you just told her at the beginning, I think, because she loved him, I think she would have just accepted it and said, right, okay, maybe we can adopt.
Or something, But
it's
to make her go
lied.
through that is very cruel.
Yeah. And then...
But it shows another element of his character, really, doesn't it? How he let anger and trauma take over his entire life, every element of it.
He's kind of a little douche, isn't he?
He's a bit of a douche, you know? You let your wife go through that thinking she's infertile, that she's never going to be a mum. And they do mention that she's a bit older and she's got irregular cycles anyway. Yeah. But, you know, what a douche.
Yeah, but when you look at the characters, Shirley and Stephen are written quite douchey.
They are.
Obviously on purpose.
And it goes back, so you can see why they ended up like that. But they're mean. They're mean people.
There's a really good scene when they get to the house as adults, and Stephen goes in with Hugh, and one of the first things that happen is they start walking towards the staircase, and then your lovely tall man arrives, and Hugh stood there saying, "Just don't look, don't look." Yeah. And then you see the tall man, just kind of bend down and look at Stephen, and Stephen's like, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." And then it walks away, and then you see Hugh, and it changes that he's back in the clothes that he was wearing on the night, and then he sees his mum on the floor, and he sees Hugh run over, pick her up, and obviously see the damage to her head, and he's screaming and he's crying, and he's cradling her in his arms, which is how he gets the blood on himself, and he's like begging, "No, please, no." And then Mrs. Dudley, you see Mrs. Dudley come over, and she's kind of saying to him, you know, that she is okay, she's still here, you know. And you see Liv, don't you just walk off? And she's like, I just had the weirdest dream, but obviously she's a ghost. And
I love the bit as well where he's cradling her. He looks up and he says, "What's happened?" And Stephen is there like, "Oh my God, he's talking to me." He doesn't realise Miss Dudley's behind him.
Yeah.
So he's got that kind of moment of, oh, he can see me, and obviously he can't.
Yeah.
And then Mrs. Dudley comes over, and Mr. Dudley. But obviously they're looking for Abigail, and then we realise at that point you make the connection that one, Abigail's not a ghost, and two, they had another child that never seemed to come up in conversation.
Yeah. But then
they
they
wanted
find,
to keep her secret.
they go up to the Red Room and they find Abigail dead, don't they?
Yeah.
And they basically say that they won't tell the police about Liv if he lets them live in the house. So if he doesn't sell it, doesn't demolish it, and lets them stay, then he won't tell anyone about what she did. Which you can understand because they want to stay with their kids. You know, Abigail's there now, the baby's there. And so Hugh agrees to that. But of course, Stephen has now seen what actually happened on the night. So all these years, he's been blaming his dad. But now he understands why Hugh did what he did. And so there's that realisation and that guilt of all these years.
Yeah.
I've been so horrible to my dad, and he went through this.
Do you think maybe the house had a bit of remorse and it wanted Stephen to see the truth, so that, or maybe it was Liv,
or maybe,
you know?
No, do you know what? Maybe it was the house being a dick. Maybe the house is like, let's show him what actually happened. Let's make him feel crappy about what he's done.
Yeah.
So, and then I think they end up in the. Oh no, does Stephen end up in the Red Room?
They all end up in there. They all go to look for Luke after that.
But Hugh doesn't, does he? So the kids end up there.
Hold on, I think that scene with what happens after, I think that's towards the end. I think they all end up in the Red Room. Nellie, you know, they're all in their little dream. Nellie goes around and pulls them all back in.
Yeah.
And then once they're all out the house, Luke's on the way to hospital. Steve and Hugh go back in, and then we have that scene.
Before we get to that though, so you mentioned about all their little individual dreams.
Yeah.
And the one with, again, this is, I think it's remorse, because in Stephen's dream he comes home, and he's got fries in his hand. Now I want them. And he gives them to his wife, who's clearly heavily pregnant. Yeah. And you think, what's going on? But then he had a red jumper on, didn't he?
He did.
And then they're talking, and they sit down, and they're talking about the baby, and he's talking about the second book he's written about Hill House. And they're chatting away, and she's saying, "Oh, you know, have you got an ending?" And he said, "No." And then he said, "Actually, I don't remember that night. I don't remember how I got out the house.
And I don't remember coming back here. I don't remember you getting pregnant."
Yeah. And then all of a sudden he looks at her, and her she starts to turn grey colour, lifts up her jumper, and then there's the horrible scene with the baby just moving around. And then she does the grey big mouth war thing that I really
and then
don't
Nellie's
like.
there, and she touches
him and pulls him out of that dream. And I think it goes round, but I think Luke is the hardest one, because Luke's there, and then his mum's there, Abigail's there, Nellie's there, all his children. And she's got the bowler hat on,
big boy
and
hat.
She's giving it to him, and she's saying, "Come on, join us." Yeah. And he really wants to, because you know he wants to be there again.
He wants Nellie back.
And then Nellie comes in, and she's like, "No, you know, don't." And he's like, "But I want to. I want to stay." And she's like, "No, you don't." Pulls him out, and as you say, she does that with all of them except for Luke, who is overdosing, isn't he?
Yeah. So the house has somehow got a needle into his arm, and and that's something I don't think he would have done himself, because he's clean now. He
and
got
it's
through
not explained, is
everything.
it? They don't actually explain how.
Or maybe he did do it.
Actually, maybe that was his dream. And oh no, it is his dream. What am I talking about? Because there's the scene where he goes to the hotel, and I can't remember her name. What's her name?
Joey? Is it Joey?
Joey. It's his sponsor, basically, from when he was getting clean. And he gave her money. And he thought she'd run off to get more drugs. But in this dream, she'd gone and got a hotel, so he turns up, got the hotel, and he's wearing red trainers.
And a red pill.
And a red pill. And they sat down, and she's like, "Come on, let's just, let's get clean, let's do this." And he's like, "No, I don't want to." And she said, "You already have." And he looks down, he's got a needle in his arm. And then he looks at her, and it goes back to the egg yolk, you know, the story about in the war and the child with the egg yolk eyes,
Yeah.
and you see her eyes melt down, which
Gross, and it's horrible.
no one needs to see that ever. But yeah, so that happens, and then he goes into the kids' room bit, and then he gets brought back out. So that's where the needle came from.
Yeah,
it was
that makes sense.
That image. And then Stephen's desperately trying to resuscitate him, isn't he? And he's just not having any luck. And they're all kind of getting really upset, and that's when they see Nell.
Yeah.
And she gets confused. She's confused, and I'll let you explain
very
that.
Confused. She doesn't know. I mean, she's obviously brought them back, so she's obviously seen that they're in the red room, and she's just kind of muttering to herself.
It's all out of time and out of sequence.
Yeah,
you don't kind of know what's going on.
You don't understand what she's saying, and they're a bit like, "What are you doing?" And then she starts her monologue, which is amazing. Because it's like she's accepted that this is the way it's got to be. I'm fine with that. She does the famous quote, "The rest is confetti," which I love. I love that she talks to them, and they're saying, you know, they want what most people get when you lose someone.
We love you.
That moment to say, "I'm sorry," and they said, "We regret not answering the phone when you needed us," and she said, "But you answered so many times before." I think that's just such a nice phrase. It's almost like she's saying, "Yeah, you did mess up, but before that point, you were there." You know, she's like she's looked back at what happened, and she's accepted. And she's at peace. Would be the right word.
I think that resonates with us because of what we do.
Yeah.
You know, as I've said before, I got into the paranormal to try and contact my dad, which I did, which will be another video. So I think that really resonated with us. But there's the bit in her monologue when she's talking about she said every house has a heart.
Yeah.
But this isn't a heart, this is a stomach. Yeah. And it just eats and eats, and
which is what it's done.
Yeah, which is what it's done to them.
And maybe the hills before, we don't know, they never really go into the history.
Yeah. And then you've got Hugh outside, and he's desperately trying to get into his kids, and he can't get in the door. And then he's like, his heart starts giving out, doesn't it? And he kind of falls to the floor, and he's trying to take his tablets, and then that's when you see Poppy again.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, "Hi, you're kind of hot,"
she does
and that kind of thing, doesn't
weird
she?
poem about the children.
Yeah, what was that about?
I think, and it was, I can't remember the name of the family of the children, but it was like someone came in, they murdered the dad and the granddad, and then they get towards the baby, they kill the baby.
But is that her story?
That's what I wonder.
When you think about it,
you know, did that happen to her? Did someone kill them all? But it's very Grandma Crotton. That was that was the first one, and then Grandpa Crotton, and then it goes all the way down to the baby. And then Liv steps in.
Oh, I love that bit. It's like jealousy. It's like, get away from
Get
him.
away. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a very weird come on, isn't it? A poem about a dead family. But
I don't think that would work with my husband. No. I think if I tried that one, he might kind of go, and run away.
In that creepy voice as well. Sorry,
he'd be like slowly walking away.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, bye.
But if you haven't seen that scene, look it up.
Oh, watch it. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's so creepy.
But it is so lovely the way Liv's like kind of like, get away from him. You can have anyone else in the house, but you get away from him. And then obviously Hugh sees Liv for the first time, and she's still young and beautiful, and he feels old and like, I'm old, I've got a heart problem. Yeah. But she doesn't see that. She just sees
that he's got a broken heart.
Yeah.
Which I think is sweet.
Yeah, but she just sees him as Hugh. She doesn't see him as old or anything like that. And I think that's when they kind of are communicating, and she's saying to him, you know, they're safe now.
And her favourite phrase, journeys end in lovers meeting.
Oh, yeah.
That's so sweet.
It is beautiful.
And, you know, she's talking to him, and he says that you've always been with me. And she says, that wasn't me.
Wasn't me. That was
you know, I've always been in the house.
Yeah.
I haven't left. That was his imagination, which is what we wondered, because she was, you know, she was at the weddings. She appeared in a few scenes.
In the bed, and the first time you see him, he rolls over and she's there.
And then when he's choosing a tie for the funeral, she's advising him. When he's in the car with Stephen, she's in the back.
Like, don't say it, don't say it,
yeah.
don't say it.
That's obviously him. That's obviously not her, because she never left him.
It's how he's dealing with it.
Yeah, it's his grief.
And then obviously we don't find out straight away, but he is having a talk, and he's saying, you know, save them, let me save the kids. You know, this isn't where they're going to be safe. I can keep them safe.
Yeah.
You know, you've missed so much, now got married. You know, they had these lives where they were safe. And then you go back into the room, and they've all seen Nell, and obviously in tears because Luke and Nell have this moment, don't they? And then the door opens, and they go out, and Hugh's there, and they're all sort of like, let's get out. And then you see Luke and Hugh kind of pick up, Stephen and Hugh kind of helping Luke, and as they kind of go past where the stairs would be, you see Stephen look around and then look back. They go out, they get Luke in the car, and then Hugh's like, oh, there's just one more thing, Steve, come with me. And they go back up to where the red room is, and then you pan over and you see that Hugh's actually dead.
He'd made a deal with Olivia. He said, I'll stay here if you let them go. And first time watching it, I assumed he meant I'll live here. You know, I'll stay with you. Didn't realise that he'd either not taken the tablet and that had stopped his heart, or if he overdosed.
More,
we don't know. But
it's the fact that Steve saw him and he didn't say anything. He knew.
And amazing that the ghost can help carry a body. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. But then you see he's saying to the kids, you know, you go, and they're like, Dad, you coming? And he's like, yeah, I've just got something left to do. And he sends everyone else off, and then goes back in, and as I say, Stephen sees him, and Stephen's like, why? He's like, because I saved you, I had to save you. And then the door opens and you see Liv. It's the beautiful bright room, and you see Liv standing with Nell and Stephen, Hugh's having, and he's like, this is your house now.
You have to keep the promise.
You have to keep the promise. Keep the Dudleys on. You don't sell it. You know, this is your responsibility now. And that's old Hugh. And then he walks into the room and turns around, and he's young Hugh again. And Nell's there cuddling, and they're all kind of there together. And Steve kind of sees that they're actually happy together now. And it's such a beautiful scene. And then they leave, and then there's the scene where they're all together, and the final scene where all the children are together, and Luke's at a table, and there's a red cake with a big 2 in it, and it's obviously 2 years clean, and then that's kind of where it ends, isn't it?
Oh, we forgot the Dudleys at the end.
Oh yes, we do.
Mr. Dudley brings Mrs. Dudley back to Hill House because she's very, very ill. And they're running through the forest. He's carrying her, and he gets to the staircase just in time.
And she passes.
And when she passes, her ghost is there as she was when she was at Hill House. And Abigail's with her, and she's holding her baby that she lost. And it is such an emotional scene. I cried like a baby when I watched that.
Gorgeous.
And then the question is, what did Mr. Dudley do? Did he?
Well,
keep living? Did he kill himself?
Didn't he come back? I thought he came back years later, didn't he, when he passed?
Oh, I don't. He would have probably done, I'd imagine you'd just stay there, wouldn't you? You wouldn't. You'd either top yourself, or you'd just live there and stay with them. But they're all together, which is really nice.
So that's it in a nutshell, and I think it's an amazing show. That's why we watch it so much. But the question is, we realised, I think the director explained that whenever they were in the red room, there was something red. So whether it was an item of clothing, whether it was a book or a chair, just there would be something red if they were in the red room.
And it always had that window at the back.
There was always the square window. Now, in the final scene where they're all stood together with the cake is red. And you've got the little window in the background. So, is he saying that they didn't get out of the house, that they're all actually there, and they never woke from that dream? So they're all in the red room having those dreams, or
living a life,
living
in a dream.
This life, as the way that Stephen did with his wife. And they were quite happy. Didn't realise,
because in Steve's dream she was pregnant, and in the final scene with Luke and the cake, she's pregnant. And if you think about it, all these associations with the red room, would you not have maybe a fear or an aversion of the colour red? Why would you give someone who's experienced so much trauma in a red room a red cake to celebrate 2 years sober?
And if you look, it is central to the shot as well, isn't it? It's central right in the front of the shot. So personally, I interpret that to say that none of them escaped the house, and the house claimed them, which is what it wanted to do all along.
And maybe it's tricking them, making them think they're out living their lives, seeing, because it's got that power.
Because I don't think it would have let any of them go.
No,
because it wanted that family. And like I think because Liv wanted it so much as well, definitely. So last week we asked if you knew how many ghosts there were. So we're going to go through it now because I actually researched and I went through and found all of the ghosts. So I'm going to read this because as much as I do have a memory, which you wouldn't think so sometimes, I can't remember this because there's just too many of them. So episodes 1 to 3, when we first get in, you see railings through the stairs and there are ghosts there. Obviously in the first episode we're introduced to the bent neck lady. Then obviously we also see Hugh running into Stephen's bedroom. Now this is the one that I was referring to earlier when I said that if you turn the contrast up you will see a ghost standing in the background to the right where the dark area is, which I quite like that. I like the little hidden ones. And then there's the scene in the kitchen where Mrs. Dudley's saying, oh, do you know the Bible and all this?
Yeah.
And then Liv comes in and she's like, yeah, he knows all of the religions basically, and starts listing off all the religions that he knows.
Yeah.
And then as Liv walks away, there's quite an obvious bald-headed ghost stood in the door, isn't there? Episode 2, Shirley and Liv are going through the dream house plans, and you can actually see 2 ghosts in the background, one on either side.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, yeah. So also when Theo walks in on the twins, so when they're kind of playing around the dumbwaiter and and around the little shoot thing, and you'll see on the left in the glass there's a ghost face, and that's kind of a running thing in the kitchen, that every time you go in there's going to be this glass, in the glass is going to be this face, which is quite good. After Theo, so after Luke is playing and Mrs. Dudley comes in and she grabs him, and Theo's like, well, you could have just said that, and they walk away, and Luke says, oh, why's she mean? And then she said, oh, she's not mean, she's scared. There's actually 2 ghosts. There's a ghost really in the far distance towards where Luke's walking, and there's one actually behind Mrs. Dudley. Obviously, Theo finds Luke finds the cellar ghost.
Yes, that's very creepy.
And then when Theo goes over to the to where she thinks the cellar's going to be, if you look, so she'll be here in the corner by where we find out the stairs are, and then if you look on this side of her, in the glass you see a very tall woman in a long black dress, and you can't see her head, but you see her from the neck down, and she kind of fills that part of the screen. Then I think the one that everyone's probably seen and is aware of is the cellar. So when they open the cellar door, and when you first look down, there's a kind of a face looking up through the stairs. So there's also the scene where Theo is with her mum. So it's when her mum's discussing the fact that she kind of has abilities, her gran had it, and she thinks that the other siblings have got it to a degree, and that Nell had said that it was noisy, the house, and that was a weird thing to say, and that's when she gives Theo her gloves. The whole time that's happening, to the back and to the right of Liv, there's a ghost stood there watching the whole thing. And then end of episode 3, so this is the bit where Hugh is bringing the twins, so I said earlier where he's running down with the twins. There's actually 2 behind them on the left, there is a ghost stood in the door watching them walk away.
Very creepy.
And then of course we have our very tall lanky man.
Yes.
I won't say what we called him. Right, okay. When Liv wears her shawl in episodes, we're going to episodes 4 to 7 now. When she's wearing her shawl and she's telling us all about what she's imagining this house to be, there's actually a ghost in the background watching them.
Which is pretty appropriate, really, because she is saying, I can see children, I can see people sat in chairs. It works.
Again, going to the kitchen, there's another ghost in the glass. There's a bit during the 2 storms, twin storms.
2 storms.
2 storms, thank you. Where Stephen is coming down the stairs initially after the chandelier has dropped, and at the bottom of the stairs either side you see a ghost, and that's kind of a running thing, I think, as well. Episode 5, when Nell runs into her mum's room to have a sleep because she wants to sleep there because she's scared. There's actually a ghost behind her. Now this is quite interesting because the actor who played that ghost, if you've seen Stephen King's Gerald's Game, Liv plays the lead role in that movie, and the ghost is actually played by the guy who plays her husband in Gerald's Game.
I never knew that.
Yeah, so that's quite a nice little kind of Easter egg there that they put in. When Liv takes Nell back into her room and she's tucking her in and she's saying good night, sweet dreams, you can actually see the bent neck lady over her shoulder.
Oh, that's one I've missed.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, yes. Okay,
Ooh,
so
this one.
the writing on the wall. So when Liv calls Nell in and is really angry with her and she's saying, why did you write this? You know, we're working so hard to turn this house around. Why would you write on the wall? And Nell's saying, I didn't do it. And then she pulls the paper back some more and she's like, you know, you've done this, why would you do this? And then she starts getting one of her colour storm headaches. And it turns back round to Nell, and then under the piano you can just see hands, like a pair of ghostly hands. Then it goes back to Liv, she walks off, and then Theo goes over and she says, no, you didn't do this.
Yeah.
And in the background you see the full figure of the ghost. Yeah.
I've missed loads of these.
Right, episode 7. When Hugh is trying to run into the red room and it's closed and he's banging on it and he's kicking it and he's trying to get it open. Behind him there's a door on the left and there's just a ghost kind of watching him like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do?
Not being of any assistance.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you ain't getting in there, you know, what are you trying to do? In the cellar, when he's assessing the black mould, there is a shelf. So when the police are there, you've got you've got Hugh and the policeman stood there, and then you've got another policeman stood back, and there's a ghost behind him. And then there's a more obvious ghost when Hugh is fixing the black mould, and there's a ghost of a woman with long blonde hair, and she's just, there's a wall here, and she's just kind of stood in the wall. I think that's a more obvious one, isn't it? Then, as you touched upon, episodes 8 to 10, there's the clock repair ghost,
which we didn't realise was a ghost until much later.
Yep. Then there's the scene where Liv is on the little couch that Nellie slept on, and she's got the twins in her arms, and she's talking to them about the future. And she makes a comment along the lines of, and I've written this down because it was such a lovely comment. Well, not a lovely comment, but so forth. She, where have I gone? Bear with me, I will find my notes. See, this is why I need to write notes. There, let me find it. Have I gone past it? Sorry about this, guys. No, it's okay. I will find this, people, because it bothered me. Right, okay, we'll come back to that because
that's fine.
The world hates me, that's why. Okay. So anyway, during that scene, Liv thinks she's holding both of them, and then she kind of, like, Hugh says something, and she looks, and she's only got Nell, and she panics, and then she looks up, and Hugh's holding Luke, like, and he's looking at her like, well, come on, what are you doing? Well, as you see Hugh holding Luke in the background in the room, the other side of the stairs, there's a ghost there. So again, this is in the kitchen when Theo and Shirley are looking for the twins and they're looking for their mum. Ghost in the kitchen glass again. As Liv is leaving the kitchen, you see a ghost in the doorway. There are lots and lots of these. Actually, what I might do is post this list in the comments so you can actually go back through the episodes and look for yourselves. So when Liv sneaks back in to the house after, you know, they think she's gone, she sneaks back in, and the big-headed, bald ghost that she saw earlier is actually stood at the bottom of the stairs, plain as day. But because we're focused on, oh, she's creeping back in,
you miss it.
You miss it, but it's literally right in your face. And I actually went back and looked at that one. It's like, how did I miss that? That's crazy.
That's the best thing about it, isn't it?
When Steve sees Hugh, that he's found Liz. Who's Liz?
Liz.
Then he sees another ghost in the corner. Now, I have got stuff together. There we go. So, episode 10, final ghosts. So you'll see Poppy, Liv, because obviously she's gone. Nell has gone. We find out at the end that Hugh has gone.
Yeah.
Now, the ones that we're not sure of, obviously, are Luke, Theo, Shirl, and Stephen. So that's back to, did they make it out? Did they not? Open to interpretation. Then, of course, we've got poor little Abigail, and eventually Mrs. Dudley and the baby, and we assume Mr. Dudley.
Yeah.
So, the total, I totaled up all the ghosts, and this is depending on your opinion. So we've got 41, which is bonkers.
It's crazy, isn't it? That someone's had to go through and edit in these ghosts.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And then if you believe that all of the family stayed in the house, then it's 45. So it's 41 or 45, depending on how you interpret the ending of the show. So did you find them all? If you did, post it in the comments. Let us know, because that would be interesting.
If there's any that we may have missed.
Yeah, if you've seen one that we didn't, by all means, please let us know, because it means I'll have to go back and watch it again.
Damn it.
Unfortunately.
We'll do that for you though. If we have to.
This is the sacrifice we make for our followers. It's But yeah, some of them are hidden in the darkness. So if you see a dark scene, just turn your contrast up a bit and then look in the background, because you might just see a ghost.
You can do ghost hunting from the sofa, basically. You don't have to go out. If you get a cold, rainy day, forget the haunted castles,
how many
the haunted
times
houses.
have we been out in the rain and we could have just sat at home watching Hill House?
Yeah.
So anyway, that is it.
That is it.
That is the amazing show, The Haunting of Hill House, on Netflix. And of course, we have on Thursday.
It's on Thursday.
So
Bly Manor is coming
Blythe
out.
Manor, and that's in 2 days' time. We have The Haunting of Blythe Manor, which we cannot wait
We're
for.
literally counting down the hours at this point, aren't we?
We are. And in the trailers that we've seen, I've heard and I've seen that there's actually a nod back to the original. So I'm not sure how much depth they'll go into, but they definitely do nod back to it, which will be really interesting to see how they do that. So what we're going to do next week, so what we're not sure of at the moment is, are they going to show this in episodes and we're going to have to wait?
I hope not.
Oh, yeah.
Please, Netflix, if you're watching this. Just give it all.
Are they going to give it to us in one big lump, which means we'd have to binge watch it?
We would.
No.
Saturday.
Well, there's my weekend, yeah. In which case we'll just discuss it. Now, rather than breaking it into 2 parts, next time we will just do it in one video. So it might be a bit longer, but that's because as much as we love these shows, we actually want to get into starting to send you videos of what we really love, which is paranormal, all things paranormal. Our
real experiences.
And that doesn't just mean ghosts, that means cryptids, that means aliens, ghosts, everything. It covers a whole multitude of sins, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of very good experiences with those things, so we're really looking forward to share them.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm just going to say, watch this space. There are big things coming from us.
There are indeed. Shall I give them a little taster? So what we've decided to do, we realise that not all of you are really into sort of Hill House, or I hate saying that. It doesn't
sound right. You've got this far. We're going to assume you're into Hill House.
Yeah, true. But yeah, if you're not really into this kind of review and you come to Black Cat Paranormal to see more paranormal, we're going to be releasing a video this week alongside this video that is detailing one of our favourite investigations, which is Edinburgh, including the Edinburgh Vaults and Greyfriars Bobby, the graveyard, both very haunted, reportedly one of the most haunted places in Europe. So we're going to be releasing that as well, so look out for that. I guarantee you'll like it. We've got audio evidence, we've got visual evidence, so yeah, look out for that one. Yeah, definitely. So thank you for joining us again. I know it's been another long video, but we just love the show too much.
Yeah, we're a bit obsessed. You might discover that.
And we will see you in the next video. Stay spooky.
Thank you.